This is The Guardian.
Today, 5 Guardian reporters on the moments this year that will stay with them forever. You listen to a daily news podcast, so we don't need to tell you just how quickly the news can move.
That Charlie Kirk has been shot.
An agreed ceasefire in Gaza has come into effect.
And our reporters are often very, very busy.
Pictures not seen before that were taken on Jeffrey Epstein's private island in the Caribbean.
Speaking to sources, recording interviews.
We're getting reports of a plane crash in India.
Witnessing history unfold in real time.
Just weeks after President Trump signed it.
But there are always moments that stick with you. Things that you can't forget, weeks, months, sometimes even years later. Stuff that maybe doesn't even make your article. It's not a headline, it's a little moment. A sound maybe, the sort of thing you lie awake at night thinking about. So as the year draws to a close...
It's now recording on my phone.
We've got a different kind of episode for you today.
Okay, let me grab my laptop.
We thought we'd go to Guardian reporters around the world.
The sort of main thing in my memory from that was the family that we met. Were there any...
To ask them about the one moment this year...
It said a lot about society in general.
...that they just couldn't shake.
Earlier this year, I travelled to Syria to get a sense of what freedom looked like in a country that had been living under one of the most oppressive regimes in the world for decades. And I wanted to capture what that freedom sounded like.
You all know that voice. It's Michael Safi, the former Today in Focus presenter and now host of the Guardian Investigates podcast.
And so one night, I went to a cafe in central Damascus, not far from Parliament, not far from the Four Seasons Hotel where lots of foreigners stay, called Cafe Al Rawda. It's this huge hall full of people, men and women, sitting around drinking coffee, smoking shisha, talking about politics, talking openly without fear of the consequences, many for the first time in their entire lives. Cafe Al Rawda opened in 1938. It's a Damascus institution. It's always been this meeting place for intellectuals and journalists and people trying to chart the future of this country.
يا حبيبي كيفك؟
ليش حالك كيفك؟
والله مشتاق لك، ليش ما نشوفك؟
I sat down with the owner of the cafe, a guy called Ahmed Kozarosh, and he told me that in the 1970s, that kind of freewheeling intellectual atmosphere, it changed really dramatically because somebody new had taken over the country, Hafez al-Assad. He said that in the early years of Assad's rule, he learned that some of his staff were secret agents working for the regime, and it became dangerous, impossible to openly talk about politics and not risk being thrown in prison. But Rawda had a kind of second life because in the year 2000, Hafez al-Assad's son, Bashar al-Assad, took over. Damascus experienced a moment that's now known as the Damascus Spring, where people were encouraged to form civil society groups to talk up to a point about politics. But as Ahmed Kozarosh told me that night in Damascus, that was a trap. As soon as people did start talking, the bars came down again. The atmosphere in the cafe and across all of Syria was that the walls have ears. Don't talk about politics, not to friends, not to family members, certainly not to other members of the public that you don't know.
بلشت الثورة بال 2011 شهر الثالث 15/3.
He said that the worst years for this cafe was after 2011 when the Syrian revolution started. People would protest, and when they were being chased by security forces, some of them would run into the cafe and pretend they'd been sitting there all along having a coffee or that they worked there. Eventually, people started getting arrested in the cafe and dragged out.
صارت العالم تخاف تجي على القهوة تحولت من مقام إلى مركز للأمن.
And I could still see the expression on his face as he talks about that. It hurt him that this place that he hoped to make a kind of centre for Syrian life and civil society had become a place where people were dragged away and thrown in prison instead.
Stunning turn of events in Syria, rebels sweeping that country, seizing power, forcing President Bashar al-Assad to flee, toppling statues of Assad, cheering the end of the family's brutal half-century rule.
Ahmed al-Sharaa led the lightning offensive that toppled President Bashar al-Assad. In recent days, he's been trying to allay fears a new government might restrict the rights of women.
At one stage when I was there, the new Syrian president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, was on TV giving a speech. You could see people looking at the TV, pointing, shouting at each other. And they were having these loud and rancorous political conversations that even 2 months before I was there would have been just impossible. It was this very special moment. It was a really incredible time to be in Syria because we felt like the country was as free as it would ever be. The people who took over, we don't really know their true nature. And so much about their past gives us reason to think that they will eventually crack down on the limited civil freedoms people enjoy. And so it was this moment, the month after Bashar al-Assad had fallen, before this new government had really established itself, that we may look back on as being peak freedom, this incredible moment of hope and possibility in Syria. And I've just felt so lucky to be there and thought, I'm going to remember this forever. This is the kind of thing when I retire, I'll talk about, that I was there.
The Javari Valley, it sort of tests the human ability to understand scale.
This is John Reid. He's a writer and journalist who covers Indigenous communities in the Amazon.
When I flew over it in a helicopter, we were just flying and flying and flying, and the thing was going fast, and I couldn't believe how much rainforest was passing underneath. The territory is so vast that there are areas of it that are incredibly isolated. So much so that the territory still has somewhere between 10 and 15 groups of people who live in isolation from the modern world, so-called uncontacted people.
Uncontacted peoples, or peoples in voluntary isolation, deliberately avoid contact with modern society to safeguard their way of life.
This is the Brazilian journalist Andrei Netto. He reported this story with John.
Contact and colonization of indigenous people has pretty much always meant either their extinction or complete assimilation.
So the separation is fairly dramatic, and that's actually key to their survival because they have not developed the immunities to diseases that are common out here in the wider world. So a simple flu can kill a whole community within the space of a week. So I was in the Jabari Valley in June of this year, and we stopped at a control post where you have to show your papers and show your authorization to be in the territory. And a policeman who works at that base was chatting with us and showed us a picture on his phone. And the picture was of an audio device.
Estoy seguro de que Dios es un Dios de amor, por tanto, si es un Dios de amor, me llevará al cielo cuando muera. Así que eso no me preocupa. Pues yo quisiera recordarle algo.
Deus é um Deus de amor, portanto, se ele é um Deus de amor, ele me levará para o céu quando eu morrer, which means God is a God of love. Therefore, if he's a God of love, he'll take me to heaven when I die. And it continues along this path, discussing death, meeting God, and related topics.
The device is the size of a cell phone, and it is designed by a religious organization in the United States. And the goal is to convert people to Christianity. This is part of a 500-year story of harvesting souls. Missionaries have been at it since the Portuguese first landed on the shore of Brazil in the year 1500. In the 20th century, the missionaries working in the Amazon tended to be American organizations.
The American New Tribes Mission have been operating here for some years. Up the rivers, the only real highway, they bring the nonconformist Christian gospel, salvation.
The leading organization over recent decades is called Ethnos 360. Its former name was the New Tribes Mission.
It's a challenge, and there's a lot of work to be done, and the people are very interesting. We're looking forward to getting to know them better and to be able to talk to them better, too, so we can tell them more about the Lord.
And the New Tribes Mission referred to indigenous peoples as brown gold. So these human souls were actually something that they saw themselves as mining. And
it's been 2,000 years since Jesus gave his life for every tribe, tongue, and nation.
It's still happening.
And yet today, there's still thousands of people groups who remain unreached.
The Brazilian government does not allow proselytizing in this kind of protected territories. Its policy dating from 1987 stipulates that isolated groups must initiate any contact.
However, the missionaries come and they look at what the indigenous people want and need. Is it healthcare? Is it education? Is it solar panels? Nowadays, they're bringing Starlink equipment. I've seen in other parts of the Amazon where Christianity is very powerful and pervasive, but the tactics to accomplish it are quite aggressive.
How do you tell people that God sent his only son to die for their sins when they think God is the guy that lives up the river, or if they think someone else created God?
They play a long game. The first move may be to leave audio devices in the forest that nobody understands, but they'll be back.
At the start of this year, I went to the world's largest religious gathering in India, the Kumbh Mela.
This is The Guardian's South Asia correspondent, Hannah Ellis-Petersen.
It's the holiest festival for Hindus, and it rotates between 4 sacred locations. These are places where it's believed in Hindu mythology that Lord Vishnu, a Hindu god, spilled drops of the elixir of immortality during a fight between the gods and the demons. And the most sacred of these 4 places is Prayagraj, which is in the state of Uttar Pradesh, on the banks of a sacred confluence of rivers, the Ganga and the Yamuna, and also the mythical Saraswati River. And that was where the Kumbh Mela took place this year. It's a place where people go to bathe in the river, to relinquish their soul from the cycle of reincarnation. It's kind of impossible to really capture in words what it feels like to be there in amongst so many people. This was probably one of the largest gatherings of humanity that's maybe ever taken place. The government initially said they estimated around 400 million devotees would come, but by the end of the festival, in a number that was impossible to verify, they said more than 600 million people attended the festival over 45 days. You know, there are people singing, there are chants from the crowds, you've got these makeshift temples which are built, which are 24/7 blasting out these kind of religious songs. So there's no point, there's nowhere in this expanse where you can find any quiet. And then when you go down to the banks of the river, which is the most sacred place, you know, as far as the eye can see, people are just squeezed together tightly. It looked like this kind of quilt of human beings, you know, bright colors. And then you had people going into the water, taking this holy dip, having this very kind of sacred moment, and then coming out. Some people were just kind of ecstatic, some people were crying, because they believe it will cleanse their souls and bring them eternal joy and life. The festival had also taken on quite a major political significance, which is one of the reasons it felt kind of important to be there and see it for myself. So the ruling BJP government, which is led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been in power for 10 years, and over that 10 years has been pushing a very strong Hindu nationalist agenda. And for them, the Kumbh Mela was a powerful symbol of Hindu strength and dominance. The government pumped billions of rupees into the festival. There was a huge PR campaign around it, you know, encouraging people to go. One of the days that I chose to go was one of the holy days, and this is when the sadhus, who are the Hindu holy men who all gather at the Kumbh Mela, take part in a bathing ritual. They run roaring into these holy waters. Historically, these bathing days are meant to be spectacular, but earlier that day, you started to feel it. You know, it had been crowded before, no doubt, but it started to feel impossibly crowded. You could barely move. The riverbank, you couldn't get access to it. What felt kind of sadly inevitable was there was this stampede, and there was this horrific sight where so many pilgrims, many of whom had been sleeping on the floor, were crushed, and around 30 people died. There are some figures which say that it was almost double that, but there was an effort to cover up the true number of the people who died. Definitely kind of cast quite a dark cloud over the festival, and the fact that there was this government campaign which had actively promoted so many people to come, and possibly not the conditions created for it to be safe for them to be there.
Coming up, we head to Alligator Alcatraz, and a court in France, where one extremely brave woman finally gets justice.
The Free Birth Society made millions selling a simple message to pregnant women. You don't need ultrasounds, doctors, or midwives. You can free birth. But behind the scenes, terrible things were happening.
I feel ashamed about this, but I didn't think that the deaths were bad until a year after I left.
Subscribe to the Guardian Investigates feed to get all the episodes of The Birth Keepers. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Out now.
So in the middle of July, I drove from Tampa, Florida, into the Everglades National Park area along a rural highway that was lined with cypress trees and these kind of beautiful, expansive wetlands to a newly constructed detention centre in the centre of this national park.
This is The Guardian's US Southern Bureau Chief, Oliver Laughland.
And it just kind of appears out of nowhere. In fact, one of the things that I remember most were just seeing these newly erected, extremely large blue signs, official roadway signs that were emblazoned with the words Alligator Alcatraz. So obviously Trump campaigned during the 2024 election on an agenda of mass deportation.
On day one of my new administration, we will begin the largest deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
And when he came into office, he kind of issued this call to construct bigger detention centres to quickly deport as many people as possible. And Alligator Alcatraz has really become kind of a symbol of Trump's mass deportation agenda.
Construction on the immigration detention center is almost finished, but facing backlash from critics.
And it was very hastily constructed in the summer of this year.
Attorney General Othmeyer says the goal is to have that facility ready to go by the first week of July.
It took, I think, just over a week to build it. It's a sprawling tent detention center. So the facilities are obviously extremely rudimentary. There are reports from inside of extremely unsanitary conditions, of terrible food, of brutality by guards. And obviously, you know, the key is kind of in the name, Alligator Alcatraz. It's supposed to be brutal. It is, by political design, a harsh place to be.
One of the reasons why this was a sensible spot is because you have this runway that's right here. You don't have to drive them an hour to an airport. You go a couple thousand feet and they can be on a plane and out of here.
And the people being brought there are effectively people who are being arrested by immigration authorities. And as we know, the majority of people now in immigration detention don't actually have criminal records. They're being apprehended simply for immigration violations. When we pulled up, some of the first people we met were a group of protesters.
Hi, who are you shooting for?
I'm with The Guardian.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, it's so nice to talk to you.
And people had driven all the way from Miami to come out and just stand and essentially do what we were doing, which was to bear witness, to watch the construction trucks go in and out, to watch buses of detainees being brought in and out as well.
But they do bring in bus loads of about 50 at a time and van loads of about 15 at a time. Yeah. And they keep coming.
There was a sort of realization, really, that in this new era of Trump, where there's real sort of lack of oversight and accountability, this was, to some people, kind of a last resort to feel like they could do something to oppose what was going on there.
This is my third trip out here.
Third trip? It's only been open a few weeks.
Yeah, I was here yesterday and I was here last Saturday.
What brings you out?
The fact that I am ashamed of my country for treating good people this way.
These places have an aura about them. The larger ones are in more rural areas. They are often harder to reach, harder for journalists to reach, obviously, but also for lawyers to reach, for families to reach as well. And so I think their remoteness is really by design. It serves a purpose. I think that next year we're kind of expecting to see more of the same, which is this continuing ramping up of the mass deportation efforts. We have seen the administration target particular cities in democratic states, but they are now branching out into other parts of the country.
You guys want to share your names too, or you're just going to cover your face?
So in many respects, it will be more of the same. There will be a larger detention infrastructure which they can use. There has also been billions and billions of dollars been poured into immigration enforcement efforts too. So I think we're expecting anyway this to only get bigger.
We always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
So this was a bright autumn day in the southern French city of Nîmes.
This is Angelique Chrisafis, The Guardian's Paris correspondent.
And there was a beautiful courthouse, the Court of Appeal. And just on the steps of this courthouse, there were dozens of women from choirs across the south of France, standing, singing together. And the soft, musical, beautiful sound of these women singing in unison together really contrasted with the horror and brutality of what had been heard in that court during the day. It was an appeals trial in one of the biggest rape cases in French history, and the person at the heart of it, Gisèle Pellicot, had become one of the most famous rape survivors ever in France. Gisèle Pellicot is a grandmother of 7, and she had retired with her husband to a beautiful village in Provence in the south of France, with lovely stone buildings and pastel blue shutters. And it transpired that over a period of almost a decade of their marriage, her then husband, Dominique Pellicot, had been crushing sleeping tablets and anti-anxiety medication into her food and drink, into her mashed potato, her ice cream after dinner, and he had been inviting dozens of men to rape her while she was unconscious in her bed. She would wake up in the morning, she felt ill, she thought she had dementia, she thought she had Alzheimer's or a brain tumour, but she didn't know that she was being drugged at night. A total of 51 men were found guilty in a trial last year. 17 of those men decided to appeal, but over the course of the next few months, they all dropped out except one man, Hussein Dogan. He appealed, which meant there was another trial that took place over 4 days in October 2025. This was going to be the last time that Gisèle Pellicot was going to appear in court. And every day of that appeals trial, women came to sing outside. There was a song called Good Fathers, which was written last year at the time of the first trial. And what it talks about is this idea that there were 51 men on trial. There were ordinary men. The lyrics say someone's son, someone's father, someone's husband. There were fire officers, lorry drivers, soldiers. There was a journalist. And the song really talks about this idea of they were good dads, they were ordinary men, rather than an idea of a monster running after you in the street. They could be an ordinary person within your own home. It says in its refrain, thank you to Gisèle, because shame must change sides. And this is this idea that if shame is to be felt at all, it has to be felt by a perpetrator, not by a victim. The fact that this man actually appealed against his conviction and refused to take responsibility and continued to say that what he'd done was nothing wrong shows that shame has not yet changed sides. Singing was a way for people to make their voices be heard, for other women to talk in unison. And many of the women who were singing on behalf of so many other women who are forgotten or whose stories aren't being told. Hussein Dogon was found guilty on appeal, and it was very moving to follow Gisèle Pellicourt as she left the court, and this bursting out of applause of women who lined her path. And then, as she comes down the steps, the sound changes to the singing, and at one point she put her hands together towards the singers in a gesture of thanks.
Thanks so much to everybody who spoke to us for this episode. That's Michael Safi, we miss you, Mike, Andrei Netto, John Reid, Hannah Ellis-Petersen, Oliver Laughland and Angelique Chrisafis. This special episode was produced and sound designed by Alex Atack and Eli Block and presented by me, Helen Pidd. The executive producers were Huma Khalili and Sammy Kent. Quickly before we go, I just wanted to remind you about The Guardian's Christmas appeal. The theme this year is Hope in Action. We're supporting 5 charities that help the people who are bringing communities together. We're partnering with Citizens UK, Locality, Who Is Your Neighbour, Hope Unlimited and the Linking Network to help support community cohesion and the individuals worst affected by the rise of division and hate. If you can, please donate now at theguardian.com/donate25. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.